For anyone who has not yet gotten the memo that the era of female pattern brain dominated politics, culture, economics in the United States is done.
All of Venezuelan experts agree. All of Venezuelan experts agree.
The European Union and all the other countries, including most of our allies, including one particular country in the Middle East, who is really not our ally, but okay. They all, leaders of Europe, they all want this chick, who they gave, I think, the Nobel Peace Prize to be the new leader of Venezuela. They are all very happy about Maduro being gone, but they have their own interests in Venezuela, Europe, Middle East, especially China, and they all want this chick to be put in power in Venezuela. It's not going to happen. They don't really give a fuck, about the wishes of the Venezuelan people. But they want her in control. Because while she is supposedly the opposition, she's actually more or less same female pattern brain of the economics that Maduro had. Of tight government control, not a lot of oil production, so on and so forth. I don't know at what point Venezuela is going to have an election. There's probably going to be one as soon as we can figure out how to actually execute an election there and have it be legitimate and believable. But whether you like it or not, Venezuela is going to be it's going to be turned into a vassal state, same way that it was prior to late 90s. One of the most prosperous countries on the planet. There used to be Air France Concorde flights from Paris to Caracas. Most of y'all don't remember what the fuck the Concorde is. Not that, but the airplane, not the, there we go. That. They used to have so much money flowing out of Venezuela and into Venezuela. And there were so many people in Caracas who had so much money that this was a profitable fucking route. The only city in the United States that got these flights back in the day when this was still operating was New York. London, and over in Europe you had London, Paris, because it was a plane made by the British and the French. It's one of the few good engineering ideas from the French. There ain't a lot of them. Until it became unprofitable and until the last one had an accident and some other shit. Okay? Anyway, they used to operate flights to Caracas. Huh? This used to be a thing. Not even kidding. That's how prosperous that fucking country was. Yeah. So the rest of the world wants to install this chick who will not return Venezuela to these types of times of prosperity, but will effectively carry on lesser versions of the current policies because the EU has its own interests, even though they are supposedly our ally. They have their own fucking interests, and their interests are not aligned with ours. Long story as to why that is. But anyway, Trump is not going to allow this to occur. And on top of that, if you understand Hispanic culture, very high testosterone culture, they would never agree to this. Okay? Men don't like following women. Will do it if you have someone like Margaret Thatcher. But generally speaking, men don't particularly like following women, especially because female pattern brain. Women really don't like following women, even though they say the exact fucking opposite. So this is all of their plans to install her. Trump's not going to fucking do that. So then you end up with this argument between, what's his ass from fucking CNN? Who has a female pattern brain.
Absurd and preposterous.
This motherfucker who has a female pattern brain. This one who has a very male pattern brain. And this one reacting who has a male pattern brain.
It's not even a serious question.
He's basically arguing with a woman. And I don't mean that to like denigrate his fucking status. I'm saying his brain algorithm operates as like a female.
The United States is using its military to secure our interests unapologetically in our hemisphere. We're a superpower, and under President Trump, we are going to conduct ourselves as a superpower.
Male pattern brain. Individual over the collective group. Fuck the collective group. We will do what is in our interests, and in this case, as an individual country. And not that kind of George Bush, we're going to invade fucking Iraq because Israel wants us to kind of bullshit. Where the UK will sort of pretend to help and its supposedly former colonies will send in, tepid amounts of troops and shit. No. It is, we are going to decide what is best for us, and by extension, best for our people in the United States, both the men and the women. Your bullshit has been in power to some extent or another since 1945. What we have done is, in most cases, executed regime changes where we pretend that the popular will of the people overthrew the fucking dictator that we didn't like. Case in point, the Arab Spring, which was caused by Israel in the United States. It's the reason why social media was invented in the first place. Most people don't know this. Where we overthrew the governor of fucking Libya. We overthrew the president of Libya. We overthrew fucking Hosni Mubarak of Egypt. They wanted to get Iran, too. Russia wouldn't allow it. But all of these supposed dictators and shit, you had all of them overthrown by a natural democracy movement of the Arab Spring. No, it was us and our fucking people making that happen by introducing social media into those countries and then using that social media as a plausible fucking excuse to provide the narrative that it was a popular uprising that got rid of people we didn't like, or Israel didn't like, or Europe didn't like, whatever. That was the left-wing approach to it. Is if you're somebody you don't like, invent social media and then put that into place to provide a plausible narrative that this is actually an organic, homegrown thing. It's the same thing they do with all the mass shootings. Oh, it's just a random person, and if only we could just cut off the gun supply. Meanwhile, the people who want to cut off the gun supply are the people doing the fucking organizing and orchestrating the mass shootings. Because same thing in Australia you just saw. Okay? That's their way of competing. Indirect competition tactics. So people like him, female pattern brain. We get what we want by manipulating. Male pattern brain is, we get what we want by going and taking what we want. Period. Female pattern brain, male pattern brain. We are going to tell the rest of the world, hey, we're going to go fucking do this. We're going to announce we're going to do it. We're going to park an aircraft carrier offshore and an amphibious troop carrier offshore. We're going to signal well in advance that, for the last 9 months, I think they've been offering to pay Maduro to surrender. They have been, going after shipping and all kinds of other things, trying to send a message, because this is what men do. We beat our chests, or you could call it like a rattlesnake. They shake the rattle. Don't fuck with me. Okay? This is going to happen one way or the other. And in the female pattern brain, they keep trying to fight it, and they keep trying to bitch and complain and whatever. No. We're going to go deal with the fucking problem. And the problem, in the mind of Trump, you can agree or disagree, is China. Trump will not let go of 2020, and frankly, for good fucking reason. I would argue the elections have been stolen or manipulated at least since '88, with ever-increasing amounts of election fraud. Because again, I'm from California. That state produced Nixon from Los Angeles, or the LA area, and Reagan from the LA area, both of whom were high testosterone males who thought in male pattern brain, who dealt with world leaders as such, and who royally pissed off what has now been referred to as the deep state. The female pattern brain fuckers all running around in the background trying to endlessly manipulate bullshit for their own purposes. They're all over fucking Europe. A lot of them have direct ties to Israel. Some of them do not. But regardless, the female pattern brain and the lesser males who have been running around in the background, endlessly manipulating shit. Like I said, like under, under Obama, which, again, that motherfucker wasn't in charge of anything any more than any president has been since Reagan. Trump's the first one, I think, my opinion, that's actually tried to exercise the job of president as it exists on paper with all of the supposed power that implies. And then, when you try to do that as a male, you swing your dick out, they all get mad because they're operating on a different set of competition rules of, in the background, gradual, careful manipulation of the Overton window and so on and so forth. It's just, it's how women compete. They pretend they're not competing, and then they're just quietly manipulating in the background. That's what women and lesser males do. Male pattern brain approach to problem solving is, we're just going to whip our dick out and hit you with it. You can decide how you want to react to that, but it's going to happen. The response of the men, in response to what he's about to say, if you ever want to understand men, ladies,
it is absurd that we would allow a nation in our own backyard to become the supplier of resources
whipping
to
the dick out,
but not to us, to hoard weapons from our adversaries, to be able to be positioned as an asset against the United States.
He's loving it,
on behalf
as am I.
of the United States.
Sovereign countries should be able to do what they want to do.
No. Nope.
Male pattern brain.
Not if it's causing us problems.
The Monroe Doctrine and the Trump Doctrine.
That's the Monroe Doctrine and the Trump Doctrine. The Trump Doctrine says they're not able to do what they want. I made up a rule that says that.
Well, I'm not sure how familiar Asmongold is with the Monroe Doctrine, but basically it was, I believe it was 1820 by President Monroe, basically told Europe, your days of colonizing in the Western Hemisphere are done. You interfere with fucking shit going on over here. After all of these, these revolutions of Simon Bolivar and others who kicked the Spanish out of Central and South America, they allowed Britain to keep operating Canada, which we have been trying to acquire since before we were even a fucking country. But beyond that. That was because we could the idea was that we could negotiate with Britain to eventually acquire Canada. I keep telling you, it's gonna happen. The Iroquois Confederacy, before the United States was even a country, repeatedly kept invading Canada, pushing out the native tribes before Europeans ever even got here. By the video that I watched of Canadian history said that before the War of 1812, there were 6 invasions of Canada from the United States, or what would become the United States. And then after the Civil War, we immediately took a bunch of gold that we got from, I think, the Black Hills, bought Alaska from the Russians, and tried to buy Greenland from Denmark. They refused to sell it. And the goal of buying Denmark and Alaska was to squeeze Canada from both sides to annex Canada. Male pattern brain. This thing, and Trump started talking about Greenland, I think, yesterday. Male pattern brain has reemerged. We are playing a global game of Risk. Make all the memes about that you want. We are playing a global game of Risk, primarily against the Chinese. Russia's not really our opponent. They tried that game. Didn't go the way they hoped it would. Plus, Russia is the largest country on Earth. They got so much territory. This is not a game that they really need to be playing, and they don't have enough people in settlement and development in that country to really play it. The Chinese do. The Chinese understand that the game that is being played is a game of Risk. And for those of you who have probably not played that game, shouldn't have to explain this, but this is where we're at as a culture. People don't play board games anymore. game of Risk is a game of global domination. Okay? Traditional male pattern brain. The United States has been operating a global non-empire empire since 1945. It was the reason we were involved in World War II and World War I to begin with, because that was the dream, especially of FDR, was to take down Europe and replace it as the world leader. And China has developed to the point now where they are, through a lot of mistakes on our end, but they are realizing that they are in a position to play the game. The game of empire. China has been building shit in Africa. They have been building all kinds of shit in Pakistan. They have rail lines going over to Russia. They have been using Russia's new Arctic fucking Silk Road to get products this way to avoid the U.S. Navy. China has been, and from their point of view, you can understand why. These are a people who, one of the oldest kingdoms on earth, they believe they have every right to become the next global empire. Well, we'll see how that pans out. I don't know. I'm of the opinion that this is not a game that anybody can really win, but it doesn't fucking matter. China has been playing it since the late 80s. And before that, Russia and the Soviet Union played it. And they realized very quickly that running an economy on female pattern brain, i.e. socialism, communism, Marxism, all that other bullshit, doesn't work. So we're going to try running an economy on male pattern brain. And what China has been doing is basically been branching out into Africa, into South America. Chinese businesses were heavily involved in Venezuela and some other countries. And, it's a long story. I was watching a whole explanation of the money supply thing. But yeah. And, you have a guy comes into office and says, well, first of all, the last election was stolen from me, which it was. I don't think the right has figured out that elections have been stolen or manipulated since 1988. But regardless, 2020 in particular, yeah. So this one is going to try to say, but the rules. And this one's going to go, fuck the rules. We have the military. We have the power. You don't. We've tried it your way for decades. And look at the decline of this fucking country. And I think the dam broke when the left started pushing the trans bullshit, which was a female Civil War issue. I don't want to get into a giant explanation of that, but it was the unattractive women versus the attractive women, and that's basically the primary battleground for that. We have been, since 1945, at some level or another, we have either been doing the bidding of Israel, been doing the bidding of Europe with NATO. We have been funding everybody's fucking shit. And, it's like the argument of, well, we need to go into Iraq to help whatever, to protect Israel. Is Israel going to come protect us? No. You know why? Look at a map. See the size of Israel? See how many people there aren't? See the size of Europe? You know how many times we intervened in this bullshit twice. And by doing so, by participating in part of this continent getting fucking wrecked, okay, we emerged the winner because there was effectively no battles on U.S. soil. We emerged from that conflict as the predominant world leader. It's why we were fucking involved. We didn't go over there to fucking actually help goddamn Europe. We went over there to set up an empire and replace the previous empires of Europe and become the empire. Now, the leaders of Europe have been using us, passing shit like, retirement plans, fucking free education, all this other, free government bullshit that is all allowed because they don't really have a defense budget. And so when Russia does some shit, because we've been pushing Russia's buttons, when Russia does some shit and says, all right, fuck it, we're going to go deal with this in Ukraine, because we started that shit, us in fucking Europe, Because the rest of Europe has forever been trying to colonize all of this. People do not understand this. Okay? All of this over here, looks at all of this mostly empty land over here, and they think, if we could just get rid of that damn government, we could start fucking expanding, getting some of our people the fuck out of here, the European aristocratic elites, and then we could have some parts of our fucking traditional property back. If we could just, we can't kill all the people we don't like, the scum of the earth, the middle and lower classes. We can't kill them because people don't like that, and there's more of them than there are of us. But if we could overthrow this government here, right, and make them a vassal state of us, well, by golly, we could just go over here and get all of our people to move the fuck over here, and we would have what Hitler called breathing room. Was it Lebensraum, I think was the word? Lebensraum? We could have breathing room. This was the dream of Napoleon. It was the dream of Hitler. Russia's not going to fucking put up with that shit. But, this has been tried. And these people have been using us to try to get us involved in a fucking war over here to beat Russia, because a war which they provoked by expanding fucking NATO, which they told the Russians when the USSR ended that they would not do, and of course they fucking lied. Expanding NATO and the EU to include all these fucking countries that are on Russia's doorstep. Russia looks at this and goes, hey, get the fuck off our lawn. This is our shit. Okay? We agreed to no longer be the USSR. We agreed to stop being communist. We agreed to change. We agreed to fucking integrate with the rest of the world economy, all the bullshit you told us. We have done all of that. And yet you sit here continuing to keep fucking pissing us off. All the bullshit comes out of your mouth. You don't actually live by. You're all a bunch of bullshit artists. So they go, all right, fuck this shit. And they take action, because they're male pattern brain. They take action. And they go, all right, we're going to start reconquering our shit. And these people freak the fuck out because their dream of empire going this way is in serious danger of not occurring. All of this has to do with this shit. Where these people over here were invaded and conquered by the British. Look up the Opium Wars. Or the British, quite literally, the British, the Emperor of China said, I don't want this fucking heroin in my country. It's fucking up my people. We don't want this shit here. Get your drugs and get the fuck out of here. And in response to that, they dumped shit tons of opium in the fucking river in China in the 1800s. And in response to that, the British Navy rolled up and says, number one, you're going to pay us back for all the drugs you fucking dumped in the river. And you're going to allow us to have Hong Kong. And you're going to allow us to set up trade zones here, and here. And you're going to operate as a puppet state. It's what China refers to as the century of humiliation. These people learned very quickly, same thing as the Japanese, these people learned very quickly that if you are not the conqueror, you are being conquered. Because again, game of Risk. Now, how these people play the game, female pattern brain, we manipulate. No one ever says this, but the Tiananmen Square protests in the late 80s were almost guaranteed orchestrated by the United States and Europe. Because they don't want to see it. They want China to be a market to sell their shit. While actually what has been going on is Europe has become a market buying Chinese shit. Okay? So all of this has to do with this shit because China has been getting into here in the Panama Canal, started to try to buy some shit. They've been fucking around with Mexico. All the fentanyl's been coming, it's from China. It's been coming into Mexico, into Central and South America. And them and the Russians, who are not exactly, they're not allies, They're just people who have shared interests of not being invaded and conquered again. And Russia doesn't want to be invaded and conquered by China. And I don't think China's got any fear of being invaded and conquered by Russia. So the Mongols don't really exist anymore outside of Mongolia. And yeah, that long story. So anyway, these people, this government, since the late 90s, has been increasingly controlled by China, and to some extent Russia, but mostly China, into weakening America's ability to get oil and all the other natural resources that are in that fucking country, which we were buying. Which, you know, again, if we're buying shit from other countries, that's good. That helps their economy. This is how we get back to them having nice shit and us having cheap oil. See how this works? Everybody wins. Trade. Okay? These people, though, helped by Europeans, have been actively interfering in this shit and have been dragging it down the shithole since the late 90s. And Europe has been bitching and complaining and fucking doing nothing, just like they bitching and complaining about Ukraine and fucking doing nothing, because they are like the city of Carthage several thousand years ago, where Carthage did not have it. It was so rich and so wealthy, it just paid mercenaries to defend it. Or their own citizens were not required to defend the city of Carthage. So when Roman soldiers showed up, bypassing Carthaginian mercenaries in defense in Sicily and in southern Italy, they just said, fuck this, and went straight to the door of Carthage. The people of Carthage were scared shitless because, you know, at the time, all of their armies were in the south of Italy. And so you had, you know, Roman guy literally go straight to, I can't remember where the fuck Carthage was. I think it was Tunisia. I can't remember exactly where along this coast it was. I'm pretty sure it was right here somewhere. Anyway, same thing you had happen during that era where the citizens of Carthage were not required by the king or by the government to defend their own shit. So when an actual army showed up on their doorstep bypassing their paid mercenary defenses, they had no defense. It's the reason why Carthage lost and Rome eventually became the empire. Okay? It's the same shit. These people ran empires for thousands of years. Hundreds of years. And some of them still are. France is still operating a non-empire empire all across the Sahel region of Africa. But all these people are still extracting fucking resources from all over the goddamn place while pretending they don't have a fucking empire. Right? The amount of flights between London and fucking India is very high. They're importing all kinds of Indians into the UK for cheap labor. And in response, you know, the aristocrats get to go over to India and continue to buy up land and property and all that shit. It's exchange between their little puppet fucking government over there, which is not going to be a puppet government for much longer because they're building a giant fucking navy. They've been using Britain to basically replace Britain, just like we replaced Britain. But anyway, all of this shit, this is a global game of risk. Now you can complain, oh, this is childish, it's juvenile. It doesn't matter. It's men. It's what men do. We compete. This is what is occurring. So this motherfucker sitting there bitching and complaining that he's calling what Trump did an invasion. No, Iraq was an invasion. Afghanistan was an invasion. This was not an invasion. This was you can call it an extraction. You can call it a heist. You can call it a theft. You can call it a kidnapping. You can call it any number of things. But an invasion, it is not. And this one, in response to his, so it's just, okay to invade more countries? And go, yeah. If they're doing some shit that we don't want them to do, we will assert dominance. Just like males in the fucking dog world. They pee on bushes to mark territory. Everybody clear. You can get mad about it, or you can understand that it's not going to change. The men are back.
is all about
rightly or wrongly, the men are back.
Interests of America.
I think more rightly than wrongly.
We sent our soldiers to die in deserts in the Middle East to try to build
got a point.
to try to build them democracies, to try to give them more oil, to try to give them more resources. The future of the free world, Jake, depends on a...
That's a flawed argument. We were running an empire. And in the case of Iraq and all of the other Arab Spring countries and all that bullshit, we were all doing the bidding of Israel. The reason why we invaded Iraq and the reason why we invaded Afghanistan is because it shouldn't be very fucking hard to understand. Okay? Is because, see this country right here? On the left side of it is Iraq. And on the right side of it is Afghanistan. And you know who doesn't like the government of this country? That one. Long list of reasons as to why. Doesn't fucking matter. These two are opponents. Or have been since 1979. These people very badly want this government to go out of existence, but they don't have the military or the people to make that happen. Look at the size difference. So what they do is they manipulate. Female pattern brain. They manipulate to try to get the narrative that there's a popular student uprising going on, and it's been constantly, popular student uprising going on that's going to take down that government. No, that government will not be coming down, and the reason it won't be coming down is because that government will not fucking allow it, in the same way that that government will not allow the rest of Europe to piss on its bush. Everybody understand? You are dealing with men. Yes, at every level of creation in this universe, life is a competition for survival. Women compete just like men. They just compete in the exact opposite fucking pattern. Collective group over individual, emotion over logic, indirect over direct competition tactics. The women lie, cheat, and manipulate. The men just beat the shit out of each other. They're both competing. One of them's just lying and pretending that it's not. Because that's how women and lesser males play the fucking game. Because they have to. Because they don't have the physical strength to just go over there and punch their fucking opponent. That's why women will frequently slap men, and then when a man turns around and decks a woman to the fucking ground for slapping him, the woman immediately plays victim. And a bunch of other men instinctively, because this is how our reptilian brain is wired, go to protect the woman, assuming that it's the other man's fault. This is what these people fucking do. They endlessly play victim. And I'm not getting into the whole Holocaust bullshit. That's... Okay? What I'm saying is that the survival instinct of those people right there is female pattern brain. They play victim. Constantly. Have been since that country was created. These people, oh, we're victims of terrorism. Oh, we're victims of... At this point, considering all the research I've done over the years the last few years into the history of the hijackings, when that fucking started, which actually started with Cuba, which was a government we were trying to overthrow. The original hijackings in the 60s and early 70s were blamed on Cuban, on the Cuban government. And then eventually it transitioned over into a narrative of Islamic terror. Yeah, okay. Lockerbie bombing, 93 World Trade Center bombing, the Kenya fucking U.S. Embassy bombing, the Tanzania U.S. Embassy bombing, the USS fucking Cole, 9/11, endless fucking manipulation because these people play victim. Because they compete like everybody competes. They just do it in a different pattern. And the reason I finally figured out the reason why so many people have a fucking problem with these people right here is because of how they compete. It's nothing further more complicated than that. And it's not all of them. There's actually a lot of Jews, Orthodox Jews, who do not support that government because they believe, according to their scriptures, that when God wants this to happen, God will make it happen. They view, these are Jews, by the way, Orthodox Jews, who view this as an unnatural creation of man, okay, that came into existence by man, not by God, and they don't recognize it as legitimate. I don't have an opinion on that, but I can see the logic of where they're coming from. Because, again, this is why every time some weird shit happens, somehow those people get drawn into the conversation. And the reason why is because of how they play the game. Because everybody's playing the game. They play the game like women do. This is why men don't like them. They use the tactics that women do to try to win competitions for power and status. That's the origin of anti-Semitism. It's not anti-Semitism, and it's not any of that bullshit you claim. It's how you play the game. It's why the rest of the countries around here have always had a problem with them. It's why they have a problem with them. Because, again, look at the size of this. Look at the size of this. Logically, if those two were to go to an actual direct war and nobody else was to intervene, they would get their asses handed to them, and that would be the end of them. So they can't win that kind of war. So they have to do manipulation. Everybody understand? That's the origin of people disliking them. And at this point, considering October 7th was when I fucking saw it, I didn't really pay attention to much of that. I believed the same fucking narrative after 9/11 everybody else did. When I saw October 7th, that's when I realized the pattern. Because that was done by their government against their own people, because they view their own people as expendable against their own people, to create the narrative and the plausible rationalization excuse to go wipe this fucking area off the map. Because in order to get a canal, which is what they want, they've wanted it since 1869, in order to get a canal to rival this canal, in order to get a canal, which, again, makes economic sense. There probably should be a canal between these 2 points. Then you'd have, 2 options for using a canal in that region, and prices of canal tolls and shit would go down, which is why Egypt fucking opposes the idea, because they have a monopoly on it. Okay? And all the governments that control the government of fucking Egypt. But these people want a canal, because having a canal will, in their opinion, make them indispensable to world trade. So long as they operate that canal, especially if they can operate it cheaper than they do, if they can have that canal, then they can never be removed from this place. Now, they don't understand that with the, well, they do understand. I think they're the people that are, that have been funding the anti-climate change bullshit. But if the world is ever able to sail across the Arctic to get from one continent to another for global trade, the only thing, the importance of this part of the world reduces by about half overnight. The only people that they would have power over as being, the middleman in between is maybe India to Europe, which, long story, but all of this, by the way, all of this shit traces back to these people and their competition for power, using these people and using us to regain their historic foothold on control of the axis of world trade. Because that's what having possession of this territory gives you. Doesn't matter if they have it or not. Okay? In the history of this planet, the Romans fucking had silk from China. Guess how it got there? You used to have a lot more middlemen. You used to have 4, 5, 6 layers of fucking middlemen in between these two places. But regardless, being in the middle here, okay, especially if you can have a canal, gives you power and control over world trade. Or at least that's their opinion, and will give you permanent possession of this territory. If you don't have access, or if you don't have control of a canal, then theoretically, if the United States or Europe were to ever withdraw support, these people immediately get removed by everyone around them. Now, they use this to play victim. I'm just using it as a logical fucking statement. These people, okay, Islam has no beef with Judaism. It has no beef with Christianity. It views both of them as fellow people of the book. They were taxed with an extra amount of tax as being non-Muslims, but that was it. Muslim law and tradition, has a certain amount of tolerance, or has a great deal of tolerance for Judaism and Christianity. It has no tolerance for everyone else beyond that. It views the Hindus of India as fucking heathens. Okay, but the West's understanding of Islam is fucking flawed. And even then, at this point, just throughout history, really, ideologies take a backseat to economics. Everything is driven by economics. Okay, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam came into existence on this axis. And guess what? This axis is on one of the major trade routes of global trade that has existed for I don't even know how fucking long, thousands of years. Okay? That's what all this shit is about, as far as this piece of property is concerned. So, but, again, these people over here in Europe and these people in Israel have their own interests. Israel wants to set up what they call Greater Israel. It's not going to fucking happen. But Greater Israel and Europe would like to have its dominance of world affairs back. It's not going to happen either. What you are going to have going forward is Russia is going to be the predominant power in the region over here. And they can all, continue to fight it out and whatever and buy shit from the United States. Eventually, we're going to be pulling the fuck out of Europe, especially if this fucking behavior continues. We are going to be acquiring Greenland. We have trying to buy it from Denmark. They refused to sell it. Well, guess what? That game has been played. Was played by the United States in Mexico in the 1840s, where the United States attempted to buy all of the Western, all of this part of the United States. They tried to buy from Mexico. Mexico refused to sell. We then sent motherfuckers into a disputed area, played victim, started a war, marched on their fucking capital, took their shit, and they, to this day, Mexico still views this as, stolen from them. Well, it's not that you're wrong. It kind of was, but it's not like there weren't efforts to buy it from you. You just didn't want to sell it because you wanted control. Okay, and so the United States does what it always does. Create a situation to play victim, use that as an excuse to go in there, march in, take your shit. It's just what our country fucking does. Right now you have Alberta considering whether or not to fucking leave Canada, and you have an independence movement restarting up again in Quebec. I am telling you, probably within my lifetime, no later than 2075, we are going to be owning a large section of Canada, if not the whole fucking thing. And, as a guy who wants Texas independence, I don't support that concept, but doesn't matter what I think, it's going to fucking happen. Okay, because I'm of the opinion that government is best held in locally. But regardless, it's going to fucking happen. Okay, and all of this shit down here is all part of this. We effectively control or have a degree of control over most of the governments down here. France still owns this. I got news for you. That's probably eventually going to get yanked from them. I can't off the top of my head remember who the fuck owns Suriname, or I believe Britain still owns Guyana. That's not going to be... eventually that's going to be taken from them as well, because they don't have the resources to keep fucking owning it. We are going to become we've already been the global empire, but the parts of the map that are still, under control by Europe, are going to be either under the control of local governments down here. They're going to suddenly declare independence. Whatever the fuck's going to happen. And then this other thing is, the next fucker that's going to be taken down is the asshole that they installed as the head of Brazil in a bullshit election. Numerous people down there are royally hacked off at the shit that he's doing. And that's a lot of that shit is being aided by China. And that's, I'm just warning you now, that's the next motherfucker who's going to get taken care of. We are going to go into Brazil. we are going to take him out. Or he's going to suddenly change policies and start being more of an ally to the United States. I don't know which one, but the fucker they have down there now is not going to be in power, or he's going to suddenly change ideas. One of the two things is going to happen. Otherwise, the United States is going to send a Navy down there and go get him too. Okay? The Monroe Doctrine was the idea in 1820, you can agree with it or disagree with it, that the influence of Europe, which, because China wasn't a power at the time, the influence of Europe and the colonization of the Western Hemisphere by Europe was done. All of these countries declared independence. All of them, started running their own shit. Except for a few of them that were kept. There's some islands in here that still belong to, European countries and shit. Those will probably be allowed because they're not a threat to anyone. But this other shit, there are a lot of fucking resources in French Guiana, in Suriname, in Guyana, and in Venezuela. Either those resources are going to start to get fucking extracted by Europe, or they're going to get taken away by the United States. The return of male pattern brain, motherfuckers. And at some point, I don't know when, at some point, Cuba will also be dealt with, although we have made, because fucking Obama, there were inroads made to try to bring Cuba into the Western, thing. We are going to be pulling out of Europe. And in response, I believe, over the next couple decades, Russia and China, not China, because China ain't going to go willingly, but Russia is going to start backing away from supporting this bullshit, and eventually this will have its own democratically elected government, which, people have wanted since fucking Castro took over, especially the Cuban community of Miami. So there's a lot of scores that are going to be settled, and after the dust settles, eventually this shit's going to get dealt with. I don't know what the end result of that's going to be, but this thing sitting here on the same island as this, which is largely heavily developed, even has a sort of a mimic parts, the interstate system. This whole situation is eventually going to get dealt with. I don't know if it's going to happen within Trump's term or future administrations, but this is going to get dealt with. These have been continued to have been run as plantations by Europe, and Trump has, Russia to use as leverage to exert pressure on Europe to let this shit go, or at least to start reforming it so it looks more like, United States development. You can have whatever opinion you want about that, but it's going to happen.
America being able to assert ourselves and our interests without apology. This whole period that happened after World War II, where the West began apologizing and groveling and...
I love this guy, because this guy is as mad about it as I am. Because the same thing, I felt the same
male pattern
way.
brain.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know, honestly, what you're talking about right now.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, you do.
What I'm talking about, Jake, is the idea, and by the way, you do, I know, you love doing that smarmy thing, Jake, and I was hoping to...
See, when men
Attacking the
think
media.
and compete like women, other men do not
We gotta have
tolerate
more
it.
of this.
Female pattern brain.
Better than that this time.
I asked you about if there should be an election.
Exactly.
I asked you if there would be an election in Venezuela. That's what I asked.
Who the fuck knows? It's been 2 days.
There might be,
the president
but when it
so
happens,
quick
that
to
election is
dismiss
going to be in
the
favor
child
of the shit that we want.
and then I
I
said,
guarantee you right now.
The objective, Jake, is security and stability for the people of Venezuela. With our help and leadership, that country will become more prosperous than it has ever been in its whole history. Venezuela.
But the woman running Venezuela right now is part of the Maduro regime.
There will be conversations, Jake, about all of these guideposts along the way. The reason why I was giving you that speech, which I know you didn't want to hear, is because you're approaching this from the wrong frame.
Female pattern brain frame. He's using the word frame. Female pattern brain rules of competition. Indirect competition. If we want to deal with a foreign country that's doing shit we don't like, we will gradually, slowly apply pressure, manipulate in the background, Work with other countries, get a consensus, get a committee. That's how women work. Men just go in and go, no, we're just going to go take care of this right now.
Neoliberal frame that the United States' job is to go.
I feel very good because I remember he said something and I said that he was approaching something from the wrong frame. And now he's saying that this guy's approaching it from the wrong frame on CNN.
And the wrong frame is female pattern brain, male pattern brain, male pattern brain. These two are roughly on the same page as far as competition tactics. This one operates on female brain competition tactics. This era is fucking done. All of it is done. The males are tired of the way things have gone. So dicks are going to get whipped out. And people are going to get, metaphorically, smacked with those dicks. Until they shut the fuck up and go away. And realize they do no longer have power. Because we've done this shit their way. To the decline and detriment of the United States. Now, like I said, I'm in favor of Texas fucking independence. But a couple of years ago, you had numerous states in this country passing legislation, Texas included, and Utah, to build vaults, to start hoarding gold, because that's how bad the faith in the central government of the United States was. You now have the exact opposite happening.
Spreading. I don't think it's because of me or anything, but it's good to see more people not even accepting, and this is a very important thing to do.
I learned this the hard way after 17 years of being married to a woman.
The frame in which the argument exists in. Because if you do that, the argument is set up for you to lose. Never even do that.
And if he'd been married for any length at all, he would understand this is how women play the game. Every man who's ever been in an argument with a woman understands.
That's not what I think, but you invaded the country. We went into the country.
Not an invasion.
And we seized the leader of Venezuela.
Damn straight we did.
And there it is.
The leader of Venezuela.
Damn straight we did.
And
Everybody understand? But you violated the rules of the collective group. Fuck the collective group. The previous administration, including Obama, by the way, look at his fucking reaction. This is the reaction of men everywhere. Welcome to the New World Order. This is how we as men think. Direct competition. Look at the sports we watch. It has a set of rules, and it has a time clock. Whoever scores more points at the end wins. It's how we work. Look at the type of competition that women watch. Ice skating, gymnastics, baking competitions. I watch, the kind of shit that women watch. They endlessly argue over the rules. There is endless attempts to manipulate the rules to get the outcome that you want. Whereas male pattern brain is, fuck the rules, or we will improve ourselves to meet or exceed the existing rules and outcompete other people for survival. We will not attempt to manipulate the rules down to our level so that we can win. We will improve ourselves upwards so that we can win. You're operating on two different algorithms. This is what people need to understand. And when I say female pattern brain, do all kinds of women get mad? Oh, you just hate women. No, because it's not about women. It's about the brain programming algorithm up here. Okay? Explain this all the fucking time. This is one of the better diagrams I've seen. Typical male brain. Most connections run between the front and the back parts of the same hemisphere, which account for better spatial skills and motor muscle control in men. Female brain. Many more neural connections from side to side across the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Collective group thinking. Individual thinking. we must work with the other half of the brain in order to get anything done. We will work in our own hemisphere and in our own hemisphere to get things done. This is the primary difference between males and females. Your sexual organs have something to do with this because the testosterone estrogen hormone balance heavily drives your brain development in utero and after you come out. However, the reality is that this is why women always follow the collective group. They're like fish. They look and see what the left and the right of them is doing, and they conform. If you let those people have power, everything burns. There is no innovation. There is no improvement. There is no advancement until eventually one day, male pattern brain comes along, doesn't give a fuck about whatever's going on over here, and will take and conquer. In order to prevent getting taken and conquered, you need other people who have this type of brain to stop other fuckers with this type of brain from invading and conquering. These people's superpower, i.e. men, is not necessarily physical strength, although we do have more of it than women. It is this. Because in a crisis, we do not care about the collective group consensus. We will do whatever the problem-solving solving the problem of the situation requires in order to be effective or successful. We don't care what other people think. That's why I write what I write. That's why I do what I do. I don't give a fuck. Male pattern brain. Fuck the collective group. I have my own interest. I will act in my own interest. I will not be, I will not hide or apologize or negotiate. No, this is what I'm doing. You can either help me or get the fuck out of my way. And the thing is that female pattern brain is attracted to this because again, opposites. There's a certain amount of this that you need in the world. And there's a certain amount of this that you need in the world. And right now, at least in American culture, I can't speak for China or for Russia, but Russia tends to operate on this algorithm. China is kind of more like this in some aspects, but it's mixed. But the reality of the situation is you have had an American culture really since at least 1988 that has been heavily controlled by this. That era is done. Most people trace it back to the beginning of Trump, TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome in 2015. I'm telling you, it goes back to at least 1988. And I can prove it on fucking Wikipedia's election results summaries. Because I grew up in California. California is a male brain dominated place. It always has been. It always will be. It is not a female pattern brain dominated place. The election results have been bullshit since 88. Okay? But this is what we're talking about. This asshole operates on this programming. This guy operates on this programming. This programming doesn't fucking care what this one wants. We're gonna do what this one wants done. And the reaction of all the rest of the men, fuck yeah! Because we have lived in a world for the past at least 2 decades, I argue longer than that, where this has been the predominating behavior pattern, especially the cancellation era, the woke era, all this other bullshit. This is all female pattern brain. You get women calling it the feminization of the great feminization of society. Yeah. The great feminization, women as drivers of modern social change. You can substitute women as female pattern brain as the drivers of competition, indirect competition tactics. I.e., men like this, operating on a female pattern brain, competing under the rules of female competition. Indirect. We hide our motives. We pretend like we're not competing. We lie. We manipulate. We stab in the back. We pretend we have nothing to do with shit. And then when shit goes sideways, we play victim to get other people to come help us when in fact they really have no other motivation to do so other than victim. Okay? And then in response to this, of course, you get the response from the left. No, women aren't the problem. Yes, they are. And it's not really women are the problem. It's female pattern brain is the problem. Female pattern brain is what woke is. It's what the left is. It's what labor unions are. It's what highly profitable non-profit organizations are. It's what, it's like, when the women want to, the high status elite women want to throw a fancy dinner party, right? But then other women would make comments and make them feel bad for throwing a high-end fancy dinner party. So what we do is we claim that we're collecting money and it's going to go to charity, and then that alleviates, the intention, because the whole point of throwing the party is to compete, because women like to compete at parties. I watch the shit that my wife watches. I don't watch it, but I mean, I pay attention to it every now and then. It's how women compete. Women, you look at most female entertainment has to do with this era about the mid 1800s to prior to World War I, which was kind of, as far as social status for Britain and for the United States, most female romance shows are made during that period of time where women had, attractive women of high status were in power. And so what they would throw these parties and they would get off sniping comments at other women. And that's how they competed. Who threw the nicest party? It's where you started to see the transition from women competing by how many children you had and the quality of how those children turned out into competing over fancy dinner parties, what kind of man you were attached and married to. The children started to become secondary because there was an intentional drive to reduce fucking birth rates because of Thomas Malthus's 1798 book about, quote, overpopulation. Okay? This has been going on for 200 years. And when I say that I can track this shit, U.S. crude birth rate since 1800. This started in Britain, made its way over here. It's what the abolitionist movement was. Social justice warriors of that time period. And the reason why the men went along with it is because it was cheaper to hire and fire people than it was to buy slaves. The entire argument that white people or the North or whatever the fuck ever cared about black people or slaves is bullshit. The reason why the transition occurred is because it was cheaper and easier to hire and fire motherfuckers. There was no healthcare plans, there was no other bullshit, and it was cheaper because if you bought a slave, it was like buying a car. Massive upfront investment. You usually had to take out loans, and you had to hope that slave would turn out to be productive, and then you also had to pay, it's like basically like what they call chattel slavery. Yeah, it was, look at how people look after animals. You have to call the vet when something's wrong and so on and so forth. You have the animals on a farm to produce money. It's what the people had slaves for. Okay? No one can sit here and have a logical fucking argument about this. Well, I am. That was the point. It's why every society in the history of humanity has had slaves. One, when you go to war and you conquer your opponents, you generally enslave them to prevent them from starting another fucking conflict, so that you don't have to fight the same war twice. And then also, anybody that you lost in battle, you wanted that labor replaced within your society and culture. So that's what the slave provided, was the labor to replace that which you lost in battle. And then on top of that, so that you didn't have to work, that's what you won by winning the battle, was the right to not have to fucking work by making other people work. Eventually, this turned into an economic marketplace thing where you could just buy slaves instead of going out to war and conquering them like it always happened. And that started with the Ottoman Empire, really, as far as, organized systemic slave markets. But anyway, this shit, okay, the feminization of society has been occurring since right around the mid-1800s. Gradually watching that birth rate decline. And in about 1934, you get a brief pause where it stops, and then you get an increase to 1953. It's roughly 1953. And then you start getting a slow decrease to about 1960. And then right around there, the sexual revolution and all this other feminist bullshit, all of which was sponsored to, again, resume the decline of the birth rate. because people who are in high positions of power have done the math and realized that, one, the more children they have, the more the shit that they have accumulated in this life is subdivided among their children, therefore diluting their children's ability to remain at the same level of status that they have. So they have fewer children so that they don't have to divide as much shit. The problem is if you're having less children than the average population, eventually you will get outbred, and the middle and lower classes will overtake you and knock you off the perch. So what we do as the elites, or not we do, but what the elites do, and they have been doing for about 200 years now, is to manipulate society and culture towards the direction of producing fewer children. So that if the middle and lower classes produce fewer children, then there will be less competitors or theoretical future competitors against the offspring of the rich and powerful elite aristocracy in fucking Europe. Everybody understand how the game is played? There was a brief respite. The narrative is that it started because we won World War II and everyone was so happy they just went out, fucked, and had kids. That's not true. The decline stopped right around 1934 because what happened was the people greatly fucking worried about the economy. A lot of people were out of fucking jobs. You had Hoovervilles and shit all over the place. And so women all of a sudden had their intrasexual female competition dynamics briefly switched back to the factory default of winning the competition of life equals quantity and quality of children produced, which is the default factory algorithm for women. You outbreed your competition. The male pattern tactics are to just conquer or kill your opponent, take their shit. Again, you can debate this endlessly, but this is what is occurring. We are reverting back to factory programming. And as the men start to take the fuck over and decide to get rid of these assholes and remove them from power, the behavior of the women, they assume, I don't know, we'll see. The assumption is that the behavior of the women will naturally follow into starting to produce more children. But, you know, there's some changes that need to be made for that to occur, but it's a long fucking story. Regardless, all of this is interconnected. This is my whole point. That's why I take a fucking hour to talk about this shit. All of this is interconnected. All of it. That situation, this situation, the one situation over here, situation down here, situation with fucking China. All of this is connected. And so finally, when the men get back into power and they go, all right, we're done playing these games by female rules, the reaction of the men who have had to put up with fucking women for the last, well, since the 60s, really, but I argue really since about the 1820s, the men are like, oh my God, fuck yeah. Male pattern brain, baby. Welcome to the return of male competition, direct competition tactics. We don't care what you think. We're just going to go do what we can do.
Oh my God. Is that you?
This playing victim shit is done. This manipulation of the rules is done.
Okay.
This appeal to emotion is done. All these tactics used by female pattern brain are done.
This is amazing.
Yep.
I've been waiting on this for a while.
Not what I think, but you invaded the country. We went into the country and we seized the leader.
It's like arguing with a woman.
Damn straight we did.
And I'm saying,
we're not going to let.
So is the U.S. going to have new elections?
Is that we're not going to let Tin Pot communist dictators send rapists into our country, send drugs into our country, send weapons into our country.
Well, that's a narrative, but you get the concept. We're not going to let them.
Oh my God.
We're not going to let them go take our lunch money.
And so positive, and we'll have a conversation about everything that you raised. But the priority right now, as the president has made clear, is a judicious, thoughtful, careful transition process to secure a great future for Venezuela and to secure a great future for America.
Wow. All right.
Let's just take a moment and just acknowledge, Jake, that what we've witnessed.
And female pattern brain response, end the conversation so that he can't keep talking and possibly influence more people. He's trying to end the conversation.
I mean, they just went in there and they got his ass, man. Oh my God. And this is insane.
Yep.